everyone. My name is Mark Seefts. I'm Senior Director of Software Development for Oracle Apex. Today, I would like to give you a sneak preview of Apex 22.2. Apex 22.2 is not out yet. Our GA date is going to be later, but we have been upgrading apexoracle.com, our public evaluation instance, on Tuesday this week. So if you want to try out Apex 22.2, you can do that today. Just go to apexoracle.com, sign into your workspace or sign up for a new workspace, and then you can try out Apex 22.2 there. There's a blog post where we kind of talk a little bit about what's new in 22.2. And typically, for those of you who've been doing Apex for a long time, we ship Apex within a few weeks of our apexoracle.com upgrade. And we cannot talk about any release dates just yet. But I just want to let you know that it's going to be a little bit later this year. So there's not going to be a release in October. A few users stats on apexoracle.com, a single Apex instance. We have over 80,000 active workspaces, over 150,000 applications, over 4 million pages. And over the last 4 weeks, there have been over 16,000 apps created and over 17,000 workspaces created. That number may be a little bit funny because if you're creating a workspace, why not create apps? But apexoracle.com is heavily used by universities, schools, students, and a lot of them simply use apexoracle.com for the SQL workshop to learn SQL and PL SQL. So there's where that number comes from. We've been updating our apexoracle.com static homepages. There's new content on the main page. I'll show you that in a moment. There's also a Apex 22.2 new features page. And there's also a new Oracle Apex in Oracle Cloud page. So let's take a quick look at that. So apexoracle.com, that's our main homepage for Apex. There's even a live link up there now to join this office hours. And what's changed here? Some introductions to Apex, of course. Then a new section of what you can do with Apex. So if you want to learn about new cloud apps, spreadsheet replacements, forms modernizations, there are links to those pages. We added a number of customer success stories. So if you want to learn about what others do with Apex, take a look at these success stories. And there are also Apex app creator spotlights where Apex developers talk about the experience with Apex. Now, the Apex 22.2 What's New page talks about the new features we're introducing in this release, kind of what I'm covering in this office hours. There's application search, Invoke API process, and many of these features do come with brief demonstrations, brief videos that you can watch to learn about these new features. And then there is the, new Apex on Cloud page. There you go. So this talks about running Apex in the cloud, how you can get started, which cloud services actually include Apex, what benefits you're getting from running Apex on autonomous, like having a fully managed service, getting scalability, high availability, security. We talk about the different price points and the different deployment options, running Apex on the autonomous database, running the Apex development service, or running Apex on ADBCS, the Oracle Database Cloud Service. And again, there are some customer cloud customer success stories, customers talking about their successes with Apex on the cloud. All right. I want to highlight this recent survey from IDC. IDC asked their participants, regardless of your organization's maturity, with low-code, no-code application development, which of the following platforms does your organization predominantly utilize today, or would like to use in the next 24 months to build low-code or no-code applications? And Apex is by far the biggest platform here. Over 25% of participants voted for Apex. Next week, Oracle Cloud World is going to start. I'll have a few updates on that. But there have been a number of conferences this week, and it was great seeing the community come back together in person. There was Apex Alpe Adria in April, then Apex Connect in Germany and Apex World in the Netherlands in May. Uli Tuck, of course, got a picture down here in Dallas in June. Nordic Tour, Oracle User Group, and DOAC in September. And then just last week, there was Contact in Romania. And the next week, we're going to have Oracle Cloud World coming up in Las Vegas. This is the successor to Open World, which used to be in San Francisco. Now it's in Las Vegas and called Oracle Cloud World. Then the Michigan Oracle User Group is happening in October, late in October, and we'll be there as well. And then UK OEG in December in Birmingham. I want to highlight this recent podcast, which got published today. That is an interview that happened at DOAC in September. Kai Donato and Caroline Hagemann interviewed Andy Mendelsohn. Andy is our Executive Vice President for the Oracle Database. We are part of his organization. And there was a podcast, an interview done where Andy talked about the autonomous database and Apex. So I included a QR code here and included the link. If you want to take a look, I think it's very worthwhile watching and listening to. Or Cloud World, also included a link here if you want to sign up or just look up what's happening. That happens next week in Las Vegas. We have a number of sessions, a beginner session, Apex 22.new features session, and session on Apex on autonomous, along with hands-on labs and case study. So if you're coming to Cloud World, be sure to stop by. We also have a demo booth on the demo grounds. We're going to have a number of team members there on site. So looking forward to meeting you there. All right, today we're going to talk about 22.2. That's going to be our next release. This is the first part of our series of 22.2 office hours. We're going to have a deep dive following Cloud World, so no office hours next week. But in the 3 weeks after that, we're going to have a deep dive on October 27th, showing some marquee features, then talking about new items and regions on November 3rd, and changes to PWA user experience, user developer experience on November 10th. All the office hours that we've done ever since we started are available on apexoracle.com/office hours as recordings. So you can go there or go to YouTube and watch past office hours. I included a few stats here for our past office hours this year. We typically average between 300 and 500 attendees in these office hours that are attending live. And then we're going into the thousands of views on YouTube later on. I'd like to highlight a new learning path, Oracle Apex Foundations, that launched this week. You can go to apexoracle.com, go Foundations, or go to this QR code and enroll in this learning path if you want to learn about Apex. This path is targeted at beginners, citizen developers. There's also going to be an Oracle Developer Professional path coming out soon with an updated certification. We're also going to make these learning paths available via LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, and Udemy. Again, here's the QR code if you want to look it up, or go to that link, apexoracle.com/go/foundations. There's also a new blog series that's been out for a few weeks on Apex on autonomous. Again, I included the QR link here and the URL. There have been numerous blog posts already been published over the last few weeks, and there are more blog posts coming soon. So if you're running Apex on autonomous, I highly recommend to go to the site and look through these blog posts. All right, then Apex 22.1, we just released the 6th version of the PSE. So you can go to Oracle Support and download the PSE from there. You only ever need the latest version. Includes all the bug fixes since we released 22.1 in May. And there's a link to the known issues page that talks about what bugs we fixed, what known issues we have. All right, let's start with Apex 22.2 new features, what changed, and the features we are introducing in this release. Just a very quick look back. We switched to a twice-a-year release model with Apex 18.1, which was in 2018, of course. So we released Apex 18.1 in May, then followed up with 18.2 in September, and so on. So every spring and every fall, we are now releasing new versions of Apex. The most recent one was Apex 20.1 that I just mentioned, which was released on May 3rd. The big new features in that release were the new approvals component and unified task list, completely revamped new create page wizards, a readable application export in JSON or YAML formats that you can use to more easily read through your app definitions and, more importantly, more easily diff them. And we also introduced a new app gallery, making it much easier to install our sample apps and starter apps from GitHub directly through the Apex UI. All right, and here's our list of what's coming in Apex 22.2. And again, we already upgraded apexoracle.com, so you can try out all these features on that instance already. I would like to start with the new application search features. I'm going to do a few short demos on some of the new features. We'll have more detailed demos and walkthroughs in our upcoming deep dives, but just to kind of give you a kind of a sneak preview of what these features can do, we'll do a few short demos. So application search is a new search engine style feature in Apex. Every customer, every Apex developers built that kind of functionality already using classic reports, interactive reports, or any report of their choice. This just makes it a lot easier to create something that actually looks and feels like a search engine and allows you to search across multiple different data sources. You can search local tables, views, you can search Apex lists, and you can search remote data sources via REST-enabled SQL and REST data sources. There's a new search region that you can customize, and we are using Oracle text. So if you have your tables indexed as Oracle text, you can also take advantage of Oracle text search. All right, let's do a quick demo here. I prepared a workspace on apexoracle.com. That's our public instance. Again, that's been upgraded to Apex 22.2. And I'm going to start with just creating some data to search in. When you go to our SQL workshop, go to utilities, we have a number of data sets available for you to get started. And I'm just going to install this task spreadsheet data here. And I'm going to install that into my local tables. It's going to create this table, install data set. And next, I can create a new application. So far, everything is not new. This is a great application wizard. I can now pick a different theme style. Let's go with Redwood Light. And I can pick my own icon. That was a new feature in 22.1 that you can upload your own icon. That's going to be used across your application. I'm just going to stick with this icon here. And then based on the data that I created, I'm already getting a few pages pre-created and have all these features, including PWAs enabled. All right, this is just to kind of set up my demo for the application search and for some of the other demos in a moment. So there's my application. I'm going to run this. This is what it looks like. There's a dashboard. There's a task integrated report with forms to edit your data. So far, that should all be familiar. Now I would like to add search to this application, and I would like to search this project and task table. So to do that, I'm going back to my application definition, go to shared components, go to search configuration, and then create a new search configuration. Search tasks. And now I have a choice between a standard search, or a text-based search, or searching a list. And then on the next page, I'm going to select my data source. In this case, it's going to be this table that I just created. I could use REST-enabled SQL. I could use REST data source. But for now, I'm just going to go with this table. Going to hit next. Now my primary key column is the ID, title. I'm going to go with the task. Description, I'm going to go with the project. And icon source, I can pick an icon to illustrate where the data is coming from. If I have multiple search data sources, I can use different icons. So let's look for something like that, look like a task, create search configuration. And now I can make some additional adjustments. Again, there's my data source. I can choose which columns I actually want to search in. Maybe I don't need created by and updated by. And then I can also choose what I would like to show in the search region. The title column is my task name. Description is my project. Subtitle, I'm going to go with the assignee. And then custom column 1, I'm going to go with the status. All right, that should do for now. So now I have the search configuration defined. I can add additional ones, and I'll do that in a moment. But let's first actually add a search page. So I'm going to start the create page wizard. Go to a search page. Let's call this search. And I'm going to search on this one search configuration. If I had more than one defined, they would all show up here, and I could search across multiple data sources. Create page. And let's run this. And that's what it looks like, just like your standard search engine search page, big search field here. And I can look for, say, software. And then I get my results here. I get my little icon, along with the task name, the project, the assignee, sorry, that's the project, and the status. All right, so that's how you can hook up search in your applications. And again, you can do that across multiple different data sources. All right, next I would like to add a remote data source. I would like to add a REST API. And I always like to use these New York City open data sources for my demos. There's lots of interesting data available out there. For this demo, I'm going to use the 311 service request that's complaints filed with the city, like music, rats, noise, whatever. I can just copy and paste this API endpoint and create a new REST data source in my application, going again to shared components, and now REST data source. I'm going to create a new one from scratch. So away. Putting in the URL, then I'm creating this REST server. One second here. All right, that's not going to work. All right, let's not wait for this. I do have an application already created. So in this application, I do have this REST data source, which is just what I was just trying to copy. And now with that REST data source, I can go to search configurations. And I created this search configuration ahead of time on this REST data source. So just like with a local table, I can choose which columns to search on. And I can choose which columns to look at. And I can assign an icon and other attributes. So let's see if that works. It might be too slow right now. I don't know what's up with that REST API, but let's just give it a try. All right, well, that was quick. So I previously searched for music, and that gets me these search results, and that is going against that REST API. I put like the little noise canceling headphones in there. And if I had been able to do the demo as intended, I would now be able to search across both data sources or multiple data sources, and based on where the search results came from, I would see like either data from my local table or from this REST API. But this is too slow for this demo right now. So let's move on to the next feature. And that is Invoke API processes. Now that's an interesting feature that customers have been asking for quite some time. The idea is with Apex, you typically build forms and reports and charts and everything directly on the underlying tables or REST APIs, meaning if you have a form, you do a direct update to the underlying table using our DML processes. A lot of customers, though, would like to use a table API or PL SQL store procedure or package to have like a layer in between their tables and the application. And you were always able to do that, right? You could always write your own PL SQL page process that makes a call to a stored procedure and submits the data and updates the data and inserts the data. What this is, it's a new way, a more declarative way for you to more easily map your stored procedures and your arguments directly to your page items. So in the spirit of low code, it's now possible to just pick a procedure and then directly map it to your form. So let's do a quick demo of what that looks like. I'm going to stick with my original application here. And I've shown you already that this app has a task interactive report. And in here, I can go and edit my data, run installation 1, 2, 3, apply changes. So what's happening here as I'm doing this, I have this form region with a bunch of page items, and I have a process that directly operates on the underlying table and updates the data there. So now I would like to have a store procedure instead that updates my task table. So the table, again, is like this EBA task SS table, and I would like to have an API instead of directly updating the table. I can very easily create an API like this. I can go to utilities, create methods on tables, call this task API, for example, then pick the table that I want to build an API on. And then it creates me this kind of a table API that has procedures for inserts, updates, and deletes. Just take a moment here. There you go. You can look at the spec. There's an insert, there's an update, and delete. All right, so this is my API. I'm going to just create this package. And once I have that package, I can go back into my page designer and change my form to use this new package. There you go. There's my API. Now going back to this page, editing page 4. I can now just remove this process here and add a new process. I'll just call this update. It's going to be Invoke API. And I can choose my settings here. I can do a PL SQL package or procedure function. And I can pick my package from here, either packages that exist in my schema or public packages like all our public Apex APIs. But I want to go with this newly created task API. And then I pick the procedure. That's going to be update. All right, and that should do it. So now when I run my form here again, I can make some more changes, apply changes, and there's my updated record. So when I do this again, this time's enabling debug. Yeah, sorry about that. I have to delete this on my screen. So there's my debug page. And when I make changes here, bringing back my debug, I now see my accept save. And I look at the details in here. I'll see that down there is the call to my new API, task API update EBA tasks. So this is how you can change your forms to call APIs instead of doing direct table updates. And this also works with interactive grids. So let's take a quick look at that. I'm going to create a new page, interactive grid. Call this task. Table is going to be the same one. I'm going to enable this interactive grid. And then my primary key column is the ID. And that's all I need. So now I'm going to create an interactive grid, which, just like my form before, directly operates on that underlying table. This is what that looks like. All right. I'm going to save this. And again, that's a direct DML. So now I'm going to modify this page. There's my interactive grid. And there's the process for that interactive grid. So I'm going to add another process here. Again, calling this update. And the editable region is going to be task. And I want to do an invoke API. And again, just as before, that's going to be on the task API and on the update procedure. And then let's remove this. And now I can run this again and make more changes. Save this. And there you go. Now, when you look at these processes, they expose all the parameters in your procedure. So my update procedure had all these arguments. You look in SQL Workshop, you'll find all these arguments defined. Let's do this real quick. Go to packages, task API. We looked at that before, right? Those are my arguments. So they are now exposed here, and they're automatically mapped to my columns, start date, end date, that maps to the columns of my interactive grid. The same is true for my form. When I go back to my form page, I have all these page items, P for task name, P for start date, and so on. And looking at my process, there are all my parameters, they automatically map. Of course, if the name doesn't map, if I have different names for my page items and my columns and my arguments, I can make my own selections here, make my own choices, pick my own items or columns. But as you create these kind of store procedure or invoke API processes, Apex attempts to map them to your page items and columns by name. All right, so that's the Invoke API feature. Next up, we have a number of updates to PWA and mobile applications. There's feature detection. So PWAs allow you to install your Apex apps on your device. That can be a mobile phone, or it can be your Windows or Mac desktop. And depending on your browser and your device, you may be able to do PWA installations or not. We're detecting that now, and depending on that, we show you the install button. We also have these little screenshots, which make the installation feel a lot more native. And they are shortcuts. So when you add a PWA, an Apex PWA app to your mobile phone or to your desktop, then there are shortcuts available that you can use to go directly into certain pages in your app. Let's take a very quick look at that. Again, I'm going to stick with this application here. And there's this install app icon over here. And I can just take this URL and show you what that looks like in iPhone. So this is, let's close this. That's the iOS simulator on the Mac. I'm just going to plug in the URL in here. And there's my application. And now I'm running this in the Safari browser on my device. And I would like to take advantage of these screenshots, right? When I just go and install, I get this nice looking dialog that explains to me how I can install this on my iPhone. And then I can just add it to the homepage. But I want to take advantage of this new screenshot feature. So I'm going back to Page Designer, going to my application definition, and then navigating to Progressive Web App. And in here, you'll find a few new sections, for example, add screenshot. And in here, I can now just drag and drop my screenshots in here. And let's do another one. And I created this application ahead of time, so I took some screenshots then. And there you go. I got 3 screenshots. And now when I go back to my app, I try the install again. I guess I need to reload this. Let's see. Oh, there you go. So now I get these screenshots shown. I get a little bit better impression of what I'm installing here. Click next and then follow the instructions to actually add this to my home screen. And once it's added to my home screen, it gets a nice icon and it shows up right here, looking just like any other application. And we talked about the benefits of PWAs before, but they are easier to find on the device. They cache a lot of the JavaScript and CSS. They run faster, and they do have access to certain device functionality. So this is adding screenshots. And then the other new feature here is adding shortcuts. You need to enable this session rejoin feature for this to work. Once you have done that, you can add shortcuts like, for example, say admin, and then point this to your administration page, add your own icon to it. And then when you install this application, and this time let's do that on my device, then you get a new icon down here. And the app looks like this. When you hold and click this, you get the direct link to administration. All right, so this is shortcuts. Now back to my slides. Another new feature is device geolocation. So now we have a dynamic action that you can use to fetch the current location of your device and return it as a JSON object or latitude and longitude into page items, or the full geolocation object into its custom JavaScript function. So a dynamic action that makes it a lot easier to gather that information. You will be prompted to allow that. You can't just fetch it, but it makes it a lot easier to kind of gather your geolocation. There's also web share, so you can tap into the native functionality of your phone to share data from your application, and then you kind of get the device-specific dialogues to share the data with different audiences. And there are declarative meta tags that allow for better previews of your Apex pages on social media. Excuse me. Then we have a number of updates to the universal theme. There's new region templates. There's a new search region template that you've seen in my demo earlier for the new application search functionality. There are new region item positions where you can, for create, edit, previous, and next, you can put your buttons in and improve performance for things like tabs and region display selectors, avoid some of the flickering that we had before. All right, a number of new and updated components. First up, our approvals component, which was introduced in 22.1. The approvals component is the first part of our multi-release effort to build workflow into Apex. And the approvals component allows you to implement simple approvals like approving a laptop requisition, salary changes, any kind of human workflow approvals can be implemented with this new component. And in 22.2, we're adding a deadline region, due dates, and expiration policies. There's better logging, and there are new operations for tasks like requesting information, submitting information, changing due dates, and so on. I do want to mention Flows for Apex. This is not a feature of Apex 22.2 as such. Flows for Apex is a third-party open source workflow solution that we've been supporting, that we've been helping to fund. And one of their main developers, Richard Allen, actually works on our team. So it's an open source workflow solution that you can download and start using today. And just recently, they had a new release that also integrates nicely with our approvals component in Apex. So again, it's not a feature of Apex 20.2. It's an open source tool, but as of the latest release, it integrates with our features in Apex. Then we worked on a number of new item types, the main or the biggest one being the new date picker. The number of reasons for this, we are working on moving to web components with our item types, and we'll talk a lot more about that down the road. So those item types in 22.2 are the first iterations of that effort. Another reason for building a new date picker was that our previous version is based on Oracle Jet. And Oracle Jet is now completely committed to the Redwood UI. With Apex, though, we have our universal theme. We need to be able to style and change the look and feel of our components, and that is more difficult with Jet now. So we are moving our items to our own implementation. So a completely new date picker, completely developed by our own team, no longer using a third-party library. And this new date picker comes with a number of new features, bringing back some functionality like a Today button, HTML attributes to make it easier to change the behavior of a date picker without using JavaScript, and a lot better accessibility, easier to navigate with your keyboard. Then we have a new dynamic content region. We had a pure SQL dynamic content region for a very long time. This one is very similar, but it has a few key differences, and I do want to show you a little bit of what that looks like. So going back to my version application here, I'm just going to create a new page. And on this new page, I'm going to create a new region, and this is going to be dynamic content. And I do have a little bit of a code snippet prepared here. So I can just put in some pure SQL code. I'm just going to loop through the AMP table, which I haven't installed here, sorry. I wanted to install this ahead of time, so bear with me just a moment. So now I have the AMP and dep table. Now this should work a lot better. All right, let's try this again. There's my new dynamic content region. Just going to put this pure SQL code in here, and now it actually validates. It just loops through the employees, and it shows you the current time. Let's run this. And so far, it looks pretty much like what we've done before, right? Like I just have like some pure SQL code that emits some content. The key differences are this is now putting it all into one CLOP and returning that CLOP. Previously, you would have had http.p calls to directly emit your HTML. Now you either return varchar or CLOP. But the main difference really is that you can now refresh these regions. So I can just put in a refresh button here, and then have that refresh button refresh the region via dynamic action, which is going to be, there you go. I can now name my dynamic action, my two actions here, and that's going to be a region, and it's going to be a refresh. And the region is going to be my new region. There you go. And when I do that, I can now refresh this, and you'll see my time here as it refreshes. So instead of reloading the entire page, I'm just refreshing that region. So the main differences to the previous pure SQL region, they are refreshable now, partial page refresh. They're using lazy loading, so they're not going to be loaded right with your page. And they do support JavaScript. So if you're running on database 21C or 23C, which supports MLE and JavaScript, you'll be able to use JavaScript to build this kind of a region. All right, that's dynamic content regions. Next up, we have CLOP support for page items. Another one of these features that have been asked for a very long time. Our text areas and rich text editors, they were always limited to 30,000 bytes using varchars to store the data. Now we are supporting CLOPs, so you can put a lot more content in there. Our computations, validations, source, default processes are all updated to support CLOPs. You can use bind variables that use the appropriate data type. And there's also new APIs to actually get the session state from a CLOP-based item. So let's take a quick look at that. I do want to build a new application for that. And I have a little bit of a code snippet prepared for that. I do want to load a book. So I'm going to use our quick SQL feature here in SQL Workshop to quickly create a new table, books, ID, title, and content, which is a CLOP. And that looks like this. I'm going to save the script. I'm going to review and run this. And I'm going to create an application on this newly created table. Let's call this books. That all looks good. So now I have a new application on one new table that allows me to store book titles. Let's try this out. Test, test. That looks great. Now let's make a few changes to this. Given that I'm storing a lot of data in this content, I'm not actually going to display that in my report. And then likewise, when I'm actually creating something new, I do want to have that title field just be a text field. And the content, I would like to have a text area, but I want to have order height, character counter, and my max length is going to be like 500,000. That sounds reasonable. So let's try this out. I went to that Project Gutenberg website and downloaded Moby Dick. And let's grab that content. I fill it in here. And down here in the character counter, you always see 205,269 characters out of 500,000. I'm going to create. And now I'm actually storing this in my CLOP column in my newly created books table. I'm going to look at it again. I can now see and scroll through this book. And of course, I can also use this with, say, our rich text editor. And there we are. So there's my book, my 200,000 plus characters in my rich text editor. So this is the new support for CLOPs and values larger than 30,000 bytes. A few additional updates. There's a new text field with autocomplete using our new native Apex web components. Again, similar to, our date picker. This is a new item type. Then we have vector graphics now for our maps. So if you're using maps, you now have higher quality, more detailed vector maps. We update our number field to show you a virtual keyboard on your devices. We've updated our calendar regions. If you still use the old calendar for calendar version 3, that's going to be automatically migrated. And then we had some updates to the rich text editor. We implemented some enhancements to dynamic actions. You already seen me create this dynamic action where I gave my true action a name. And that was actually one of the ideas from the Ideas app. So thanks for contributing your ideas. So now it's possible to name your true and false actions with custom names. There's also some additional new features to debounce or throttle your actions, giving you more control about the timing and frequency of your actions. Release or two ago, we introduced template directives for things like email. We extended that now to HTML expressions in classic reports and interactive reports. Then there are some changes to the Apex global search, making it easier to search for things like alias page, some enhancements to the data generator, If you're using the ABEX LDAP API, you can now use our web credentials, reference our web credentials. And there have been some new Apex escape functions that work with CLOP and CSV. We also introduced landmark support. Landmarks are a standard accessibility feature, and landmarks make it a lot easier for screen reader users to navigate your application. So like all regions, you can now define landmarks. You can override them with your own, you can override the defaults with your own landmark definitions. And we now have developer toolbar integration. So when you look at your Apex page, let's just stick with this one here. Many browsers have landmark support already built in. So you can go to something like the landmarks here, and then you get an overview of all the different landmarks that your application or your page has defined. But with Apex 20.2, you can also show them inline. We added this show landmarks feature, which shows you all the different landmarks of your page. So there's the banner, there's the navigation section of your page, then there's a main region, then there's a search bar, and then there's a data view that shows you the results. And then down here you have the footer. All right, so that's landmarks. Then going next, JavaScript libraries. With each release of Apex, we always upgrade our third-party libraries. We have some fairly large libraries like OracleJet included that we also upgrade with each release. We also have lots of smaller libraries, jQuery, jQuery UI, full calendar and such included. So all these libraries are upgraded and tested with each release of Apex. And I think it's a little bit of an underrated feature with Apex because a lot of effort goes into upgrading libraries, testing that all the libraries still work and all our components still support them. And if you were using any other framework or JavaScript framework to build your applications, it would be on you to kind of make sure that all these dependent libraries are upgraded. With Apex, you get that out of the box. You upgrade Apex to the latest version, and along with it, you get all these JavaScript library upgrades. All right, that was my update. We will have lots more details, lots more deep dives coming up after Cloud World. So in 2 weeks, we'll start the first one, and then every week, 3 weeks in a row, we're going to do deep dives in all of these new features. And again, please come back in 2 weeks' time, and then we'll look into some deep dives. So thank you, everyone.